What's up, everyone? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel, and it's time for my top 4 college football playoff standings / projections after Week 9 of the 2022 college football season. Basically, how this video works, this is just based off of how the top 4 teams played this past weekend during Week 9 of the 2022 season. And I give you 4 out of the best teams. I give you 4 of the best teams that really prove to me that they are playoff contenders. That's how this video works, and I will make a prediction. And basically, this is not a prediction. This is simply a projection that I think how the playoff, standings would look like after this week, and how these teams will go up against each other if these games were to happen tomorrow. So that's how the video works. Let's get right into it here with my top 4 standings after Week 9 of the 2022 season. And here are the semifinal games. This is where the semifinal games will be held at. The Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl will be the number 1 versus number 4 seed. And the number 2 versus number 3 seed will be held at the Verbo Fiesta Bowl. So this is the college football playoff bracket. And the top 25 college football playoff rankings came out Tuesday. So this is where the season gets real. It's where the season gets real. When all these teams, are they good enough to be in the playoff or are they not? So but we'll start with the number 1 seed. I had a pretty tough time with the number 1 seed. Both of these teams play this Saturday, probably the biggest game of the weekend. Yes, it is Georgia versus Tennessee. And I had a tough time going with the number 1 seed, but I'm going to keep my pick. I'm going to pick Georgia at number 1. I think the winner of this game between Georgia and Tennessee will move to number 1 the next week on my college football playoff top 4 standings. It was a tough one. Georgia defeated Florida. They weren't ranked, but, I had a tough time with it. I had a tough time with it because Tennessee has more top 25 wins than Georgia, but Georgia still, to me, is a great team, and I think they still prove to be number 1 right here in the college football playoff top 4 standings, and they're number 3 in the college football playoff top 25, which is really interesting. The playoff didn't make any sense this past Tuesday. But Georgia is my number 1 seed. They play Tennessee this Saturday. And speaking of Tennessee, they are going to be at number 2 on my college football playoff standings this week. Last week, I had them at number 3. I think that performance against Kentucky proved to me that Tennessee is the most dangerous offense in the country. I think they are pretty much better than Ohio State's offense as well. You look at the game that Ohio State played last week against Penn State, just wasn't a performance that I think, Ohio State could have put on better. But I gotta tell you, Tennessee is the most dangerous team perhaps in the country. If they do that this Saturday, if they beat Georgia, they are the most dangerous team in the country and possibly in the nation as well. So, Tennessee, though, plays Georgia, and, that is going to determine if Tennessee is the best team in the SEC as well. This game right here, Georgia versus Tennessee, is going to prove to be, the best game of the weekend. Now, who Tennessee will play? That is the question. Who will Tennessee play in the Verbo Fiesta Bowl if this game were to happen tomorrow? It's going to be Ohio State. I had them at number 3. It was a pretty tough one between Michigan and Ohio State because, just based off of the performances, though, I think Ohio State's defense proved to me that they could still be number 3 on this list. But, Ohio State forced some turnovers. That defense looks to be a lot better. That was the best game I think I've seen the defense play all year long. And they forced some turnovers on the Penn State offense. And Penn State just could not get back in that game, in the fourth quarter. Ohio State's offense came out on top. And, the defense had to come out on top, though. The defense, had to win that game for them. And that's what happened for Ohio State. So I got them at number 3, playing Tennessee in the Verbo Fiesta Bowl. Georgia, who will they play as the number 4 seed, though? I'm going to go with Michigan. I'm going to go with Michigan State with my pick here. And I think, Michigan, they didn't really look really good against, Michigan State. The defense, though, looked really solid. Ohio State and Michigan's defenses are both pretty even. Offensively, though, they both had a pretty tough time in their games. Michigan already played Penn State. Remember, they blew them out, but Ohio State already beat Penn State as well. So both of these teams, they're at the top of the East now. It's not really down to Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan. It's just down to Michigan and Ohio State. So, both of these teams are at the top of the top of the Big Ten East, and it's going to really determine who is the top team in that Big Ten East division. It's going to happen at the end of the year. Michigan versus Ohio State, not until the last game. Maybe some of these teams slip up at the end of the year. Maybe they lose a trap game or something like that, but I don't really see all 4 of these teams losing for the rest of the year. I mean, it's going to come down to Georgia and Tennessee, but let's get right into the predictions now. If I was going to make a prediction on the Georgia versus Michigan game, I would still choose Georgia because, honestly, the defense is just good enough. I think, the defense will hold off Michigan's offense. It's a pretty even matchup, though. I mean, I think Michigan, if they were coming into this game, they would try to get revenge on this team. And I could see that happening. I could see Michigan not losing to Georgia pretty big. I mean, like they were last year. I see Michigan perhaps beating Georgia this year if this game were to happen, but I just don't think it will be enough. I think Georgia is too good enough to, stop on the both sides of the ball. So I'm going to pick the Bulldogs here. Now, Tennessee versus Ohio State. Last week I picked Ohio State to defeat Tennessee. This week I'm going to go with a different pick. I'm going to pick Tennessee to defeat Ohio State. Why? Because I think Tennessee's offense is just explosive. I don't think Ohio State will slow down the Tennessee, offense. I think defensively for Tennessee, they're not really all that, good. But, they forced some turnovers last week against the Kentucky offense. And that game right there proved to me that Tennessee is a college football playoff contender, and they are a real threat in the SEC. And, this game right here between Tennessee and Georgia just comes down to who is the most dangerous team in the country this season. I mean, got 2 great offensive teams going at it, but Tennessee versus Ohio State would be a pretty good one, the Verbo Fiesta Bowl. I would like to see this matchup, to be honest. I think, both offenses are pretty talented, but Tennessee, I think, is just a little bit better. I mean, that wide receiver unit is explosive. Jalen Hyatt leading the way. And then you got Hendon Hooker, who's just a quarterback that, is so consistent. I mean, you got to give him a lot of credit this season, what he's done for Tennessee. All right, the national championship game between 2 SEC teams, Georgia versus Tennessee. This one's a tough one. I mean, what if Tennessee loses to Georgia tomorrow? What if they lose that game and they head on, to the national championship with just, a 12-1 record? Well, I would say it is pretty close between these 2 teams. I mean, honestly, both offenses are good, both defenses. Maybe perhaps Georgia is the better defense heading into this Saturday. I mean, yes, I'm picking Georgia to win that game, but, I think revenge is a factor for Tennessee. Even if they lose to Georgia in the regular season, I mean, I could see Tennessee getting revenge in this game. It's a neutral site game. I know some people have said that if Tennessee, in their projections will get a revenge game on Georgia, and they would win. And I'm going to stick with that. I think Tennessee wins the national championship. Yes, I am a Tennessee fan, but, the revenge game, I think, will be a factor for Tennessee. I mean, that offense is just explosive. I mean, they should be pretty explosive against the Georgia defense tomorrow. That is a game that is going to come down to the wire, and probably kind of similar to the Alabama versus Tennessee game. I mean, Georgia hasn't really had, a tough competition this season. Yes, that Kent State and Missouri games were just a fluke, but, this is Georgia's first real test. I mean, it's against Tennessee that has 5 top 25 wins this year, and Georgia doesn't really have a lot of top 25 wins. But both great quarterbacks here going at it. Hendon Hooker versus Stetson Bennett, and he got some great tailbacks, for Tennessee. Jabari Small being really good this season. But Tennessee's wide receiver group is just really explosive on that side of the ball. But Georgia versus Tennessee is tomorrow. That is a big game there in the SEC East, and it really decides the SEC East. I can't wait for this one. That is my top 4 standings for after Week 9 of the 2022 college football season. And stay tuned here for more on the Lucas Ross Sports Channel.